meantime, my first guest says that the chair of the Federal Reserve is arguably the most powerful economic official in the United States and the least accountable. He also says that there's a difference, folks, between the Fed being independent and immune from failure. So I'm going to bring in now Azoria CEO James Fishback. James, you wrote a piece last week. It was really a marvelous piece, and you said that Trump should have the power to fire Powell, and you think also that maybe it could come through this Wilcox decision. Maybe that would sort of set a legal path for Trump to do so. Why do you feel this way?
Well, good afternoon, Charles, and happy Easter. Look, the President of the United States absolutely under our Constitution has the right to remove any executive officer, and Jay Powell is no exception. I laid out the legal argument last week, but this week I have to tell you, after Jay Powell's speech in Chicago where he was engendering all of this negativity and pessimism, he talked about 4 key areas of President Trump's agenda: immigration, deregulation, fiscal policy, and tariffs. And you know what he talked about entirely in his speech? Only tariffs. He had nothing to say about the deregulation agenda, which lowers inflation, lower fiscal spending, which lowers inflation, and reducing the immigration burden, which lowers inflation. He's selectively looking at individual parts of the economy to decide what to do. And at the end of the day, it's not that President Trump is pressuring Jay Powell to cut rates. It's that the real economy is pressuring Jay Powell to do the right thing. We're in the middle of trade negotiations. Inflation is down to 1.5%, according to the Truflation Inflation Index. Doge is saving the taxpayer money. By all accounts, inflation is already lower and headed lower from here. That's why the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada are all preemptively cutting rates. And Jay Powell, Mr. Too Late, as President Trump rightly coined him, is once again doing the wrong thing. And the president has a First Amendment right to call that out. And we're going to find out very soon, I believe he does, has the constitutional right to remove the Fed chair, which he should absolutely consider.
Yeah, and it is obviously intriguing because this Federal Reserve, by the way, is the only one with an official dual mandate. And I think that's hamstrung them a lot over time. And I put that on Congress. Congress gave away that obligation in the 1970s. But you've also emphasized that this is not necessarily about trial or pump. You say this is about democratic oversight. And I want to get to that for a moment because I started this piece off showing how Powell cut rates last year right before the election. Many people at the time thought it was politically driven. I pushed back against that. But also it was 2 days after a scathing letter from Senator Warren. And it does feel like Republican presidents, particularly in recent history, have had a really hard time with Fed chairs. Is there something political going on?
Yeah, there is. And just look at the numbers, Charles. For every 1 Republican economist who works at the Federal Reserve, there are 10 Democrat economists. For every $1 donated from Fed employees in the 2020 election, 97 cents went to Democratic candidates or causes. The rate cut that had no justification in fundamentals of the economy before the election was designed to throw Kamala Harris a lifeline. And now when there's a real justification with lower inflation in the midst of a trade negotiation, a real justification for lower rates, Jay Powell wants to do absolutely nothing except stand in the way. And so it's right that President Trump is calling this out. He has many options in front of him. But I just wish that Jerome Powell would do the right thing. Look at the facts. Right. Look at what his colleagues in Europe and Canada and England are doing and lower rates to support our economy in this critical transition period.
So, James, many are concerned, myself included, at firing Powell at this very second, with the market as fragile as it is, could actually do more harm than good. Some have also talked about a shadow Fed chair. Would you be open to that?
I would be open, and I would be honored if the president would consider me for shadow Fed chair. I've been following this for a decade now, looking very closely at Fed policy and its implications, not just on the stock market, Charles, but on real America. As we speak, President Trump is meeting with the executives of companies like Walmart, Home Depot, and Target. He regularly meets with farmers, the unemployed, retirees. Jay Powell just sits around listening to whatever 400 PhD economists say, talking about racial injustice and climate change. We need a Fed that is accountable to the American people and that focuses on the real economy. To your question, I'm going to be very honest with you. If President Trump decided to fire Jay Powell right now, the stock market would panic. But at the end of the day, our founding fathers would not want us to make long-term decisions based on the short-term emotions of a highly volatile market. I think the president should consider his options. And at the end of the day, ultimately, the American people and history, not the stock market, are going to decide his fate.
James, good stuff. I implore everyone to get a chance to read your article. And certainly the topic is moving markets today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charles.
Engendering. Engendering investor confidence is crucial for economic recovery. Preemptively. The central bank acted preemptively to curb inflation. Intriguing. The new trade agreement presents some intriguing opportunities for growth. Hamstrung. Small businesses are hamstrung by excessive regulation. Lifeline. The stimulus package served as a lifeline for struggling households. Stand in the way. High interest rates may stand in the way of economic expansion. Fragile. The post-crisis economy remains fragile and needs support. Would you be open to that? Would you be open to that new tax reform proposal to stimulate growth? Panic. The unexpected bank failure triggered market-wide panic. Volatile. Oil prices have been highly volatile due to geopolitical tensions. Implore. Economists implore the government to invest more in infrastructure. Ultimately. Ultimately, consumer spending will determine the pace of recovery. The economy remains fragile, and any sudden shock could engender panic. Though the government acted preemptively with stimulus measures, inflation risks are still intriguing investors. Many small businesses are hamstrung by rising costs and tighter credit. For them, government aid is a critical lifeline. However, political divisions often stand in the way of passing effective policies. Analysts implore lawmakers to act responsibly. Markets may seem volatile, but ultimately, public trust and sound leadership will decide the outcome. Would you be open to that kind of bipartisan solution? The economy remains fragile, and any sudden shock could engender panic. Though the government acted preemptively with stimulus measures, inflation risks are still intriguing investors. Many small businesses are hamstrung by rising costs and tighter credit. For them, government aid is a crucial lifeline. However, political divisions often stand in the way of passing effective policies. Analysts implore lawmakers to act responsibly. Markets may seem volatile, but ultimately, public trust and sound leadership will decide the outcome. Would you be open to that kind of bipartisan solution?
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.